All right, so everybody, welcome to Women Who Code Salt Lake City. We've got our monthly event here. We've got a whole bunch of really talented individuals coming to present to us on, well, not necessarily just to present. We've got actually a pretty interesting conversation planned out around networking at work, where a lot of people, I don't know, it's not the most comfortable thing to do networking or to, and I say do networking, it's like it's a chore. It's a common thing to think about. So we're going to be kind of flipping the perspective on that today in this conversation. Without going into too much detail, we've got Clinton who's going to go through and do a little bit more on that. I just wanted to welcome everybody on behalf of Women Who Code, Myriad Genetics, and I think that's about it. I've got everybody on mute except for our participant or except for our panelists at the moment. Feel free to drop in the chat any questions that you guys have along the way. If there's something that's super relevant, Clinton and I will moderate and be pulling those questions into the conversation. We also have a little bit of time towards the end that we will be taking questions as well. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Clinton and Martina from Myriad. You guys go ahead and give us a little bit more detailed introduction, and then we'll jump in.
Sure. You may start off, Martina.
Yeah, go ahead.
Clinton Maddox. I'm the director of clinical interfaces at Myriad. We're getting together to talk about networking and how we got into tech and the importance of networking in our careers, both in the past and now. I spent my trainings in biochemistry. I spent the first half of my career in academics. I was actually in a research institution, and the company was called Southern Research, and I had the opportunity to work with two really strong mentors there, and that the kind of environment there and for collaboration was really positive. It was really easy to, everyone kind of had an open door policy. It was easy to work with people on grant applications and publications, so it was easy to grow kind of meaningful work relationships that I kind of took for granted at the time. So I spent 6 years there, and it's really kind of the beginning of my career. And it wasn't until I moved on to a couple other institutions that I realized that environment doesn't happen by accident, and that it isn't kind of a given. So the relationships that I built there are still beneficial today. Now, recently as a month ago, I was able to connect someone that I knew still in contact with from Southern Research with someone who was looking for a position. So later on in my career, after I'd moved into tech and into software development, I've made it a kind of a point to consciously try to have that same sort of environment, that same sort of collaborative feel on my teams and in the organizations that I work in. So I think we've got a handful of questions we've got ready for that. We'll ask the panelists here, and I think we'll take a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. So you want to go around? How about Martina?
Yeah, let's go around and introduce ourselves as the panelists. I guess I'll go first since I'm already talking. So I'm Martina Schallenberg. I'm waving because I don't know, it's a waving thing now on Zoom calls. I am the director of software engineering at Myriad over the business operations efficiency department. Our job is to streamline, centralize, and automate the business logic that drives all the orders, billing, and revenue cycle activities here at Myriad to eliminate the path to better health. And I got into leadership, so I'm not going to talk about my entire career because it's so back and forth and weird that it would take a long time. But I got into leadership by this like awfully established way in startups where you become a really, really good software engineer. So then they're just like, great, now you manage these software engineers, go train them up, and now you have a team and lead them. And to me at that point, middle management it still kind of leaves a weird taste in my mouth, right? But so I resisted it for a really long time. But since then I have kind of accepted it, not as this dirty thing that people make fun of in movies, but somewhere where I can really have a purpose and be useful in the lives of other people. And the companies that I have worked for have since this started, have kind of shaped my perspective on networking and on connections and how important they are. With that said, most of my jobs in my life, even before leadership, really depended on networking. It wasn't really networking that I thought of it as at the time. It was connections and me proving myself through my work and working with people and being reliable and loyal and trustworthy, and maintaining those connections over the time, that having those relationships overshadowed the terrible first impressions I tend to make on people. There's like, the job I got here was through a boss who hired me at a previous company, who's a lab director, a VP of lab here, who recommended me for the position. I got a job as a paralegal in LA, and after I got hired, my boss told me that he literally only hired me because of the raving reviews I got from my PI from Oregon Health and Science University, where I studied medical and molecular genetics. It was a situation here where I moved from LA from a legal position to try to apply to a legal position here again. The interview was so awkward and so weird because I didn't match Salt Lake City legal standards at the time. I had piercings, I had like colored hair. And the guy like was like, okay, thank you, have a great life. And then he called me a week later and said that, you know, he understands the interview didn't go well, but he talked to my previous employer at the legal firm, and like, if I want the job, it's mine. I told him no, thank you, because it was too awkward at that point. But so networking really has brought me here and has opened doors for me that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Okay, that's kind of about me and why I'm here. Amy?
Sure. Great. So I'm Amy Duffenbaugh, and I'm the Vice President of Customer Service at Myriad. And I started out my career in more of the science-related field, thinking I wanted to work in the lab, and I did that for a number of years, but then started to realize that maybe more of what I enjoy is the kind of administrative side of things and the people part of things, and not so much that work on the bench in a lab situation. And so I've had a lot of great opportunities at Myriad to kind of grow my career. I also did my MBA at the University of Utah to try to round out my background a bit, and add to kind of my science background. And I think for me, networking has been really important, both in just the opportunities to be part of projects and cross-functional teams, but then also having advocates for me, like as I've moved up in my career, and people who can vouch for me. So similar to kind of Martina's, experience too, of having people who are there to champion you along the way as well. And so I really see networking as something I enjoy as part of the work situation, in terms of being able to be part of those cross-functional teams. It's really fun to be on a group that has tech and customer service and lab, and that kind of cross group of people, and be able to enjoy that. So that's a little bit about me. I don't know, Saskia, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in Germany, and I had my kids really early in my career. So, not in my career, I didn't even work before I had children, but I went to the university and got my biology degree. And then I was a homestaying mom for a little bit and had no clue on how to even apply for a job. But I was always curious. And one day I was invited to a wedding and met someone who vaguely looked familiar, and we started to talk and find out where he had the same impression. We have met before, found out that we went to the same university, both studying biology, and we loosely stayed in contact. And then when he, almost a year later, I get a call from him that he's looking for people for the lab, and that's how I got into my first job. During the interview, the person that I would ultimately report to was like, well, she has zero experience. We don't, that's not what we need. And he didn't want to hire me. I think I got hired because there was just no one else. And subsequently to how I got into Myriad, because that was absolutely not on my radar to work for a US-based company or something. I the CEO of the previous company I worked for, on social events like a Christmas party or so, that he was very approachable. And I always try to find out what I have in common with other people. And we found out that we both like the mountains a lot. And so having that conversation probably made me to one of the people that he could remember, and he knew what I did from a career perspective, how I helped setting up a different department and so on. So he left the company and became a consultant. And when he was looking for people to build up a lab for Myriad in Munich, he remembered me and said, and contacted me and reached out and asked if I would be interested in doing it. Even if I didn't even know that he would become a consultant. So my curiosity and being willing to stay connected on a different level with people, even without a purpose, turned out to be very useful throughout my career. Where do we go on, Cynthia?
Yeah, that's an awesome story, Saskia. I didn't even hear that story before, so thanks for sharing. Yeah, my name is Cynthia. I identify as she, her, and I work at Myriad Genetics as a director of software engineering, primarily in the lab space. So Myriad Genetics is a company that does a lot of different types of genetic testing, and the team that I'm in charge of is responsible for like writing software to support the lab space. So that's like running the lab and the like genetic variant stuff. So we work with like a lot of different types of stakeholders. And again, I'm like similar to everybody else here, I'm very excited to be talking on this topic. Because I think one of the best pieces of career advice I've ever gotten in my life is the importance of networking and finding mentors very, very early on. I think someone told me, you know, find mentors, find many of them, find female mentors, and like make sure to like seek advice from them about everything. And I think that's been true. I found that like people by nature just like really want to help you. And I've been blessed with just like having so many connections that like really helped me see difficult situations in very different lights, and like taught me how to react to different career decisions with a lot more perspective. So I came out of school as a bioinformatics major and realized like I hated it because I was really bad at math. And one of my mentors at that time told me, you know, you're bad at math, but good at software engineering. So why don't you give software engineering a try? And I was like, okay, absolutely. So you're a brand new software engineer. I was like, what should I do? So I went into making Facebook games and I like hated it. And I was like, this is not the career path for me. And another one of my mentors at that time was like, why don't you try giving like biotech a try? So I went into nonprofit and did that for a little bit, and then kind of spoke to a lot of different people and realized like nonprofit is great. I love the science space, but I really wasn't interested in grant writing, which like a lot of there's a lot of that in the nonprofit space. So another one of my mentors at that time directed me into giving industry a try. And so I worked at a company called CardioDX for a really long time, working there as kind of a software engineer. And then at that time, I had the opportunity, there was like a difficult career decision at that time where they were like, we want to promote you to being a manager, but the manager role, like what they wanted to do was like offshore all of their engineers. So the manager role would have not been like managing like building software, but really just like managing a team of consultants. And really through like the guidance of a lot of my mentors, they kind of told me that you know, the opportunity to manage will always be there, but like you really have this opportunity to like to really like follow your dreams and like do what you want. And so from there I went into like a consulting role where I like consulted as an engineer for many different situations, and then had the opportunity to manage again at Myriad Genetics. So I really kind of felt like I had like a non-linear career path, and it was really through like the guidance of my mentors and through my network that like I feel like pretty happy with where I am today. So I'm just like excited to be talking about this topic because I think it like really shaped so much of like my career and my life, and like I really do believe in the importance of it.
Thank you. That's kind of fascinating to hear those details about people that I've worked with for 3 years now. So you want to just jump right into the questions, Cece? Okay. Well, Cynthia, why don't we come right back to you? So what is networking and why is it important?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think I used to think of networking as like, like people say like, do you network? And I used to think of it as like schmoozing at happy hours or like attending meetings that explicitly say the word like network in them. And I was like, this does not sound fun. Like, I don't like talking to strangers. And like, while I'm like much more open to those situations now, I kind of realized that that's not really the only pathway to networking. I think one of the things that really drove that point home was I was like talking to one of my bosses. I forget when it was, but he said to me like, he had like a really, really tough week. And I was like, oh, well, do you want to reschedule our one-on-one then? And he was like, no, like one-on-ones are actually like my favorite part of my day, like my favorite part of my week. And that just like really stuck with me and really resonated with me. And I was like, oh, you're right. Like people always say that people are the most important part of a job, and like no matter how great an idea is or a company is, it's like the people that you work with that really make or break a company. And I like come to realize like one-on-ones are like a way to network. That's like part of networking. So I guess the question is, why is it important? Like I definitely think that networking is like a really, really core part of just like maintaining good company culture, collaboration, and just like flow of information. And like really just taking that opportunity with like every meeting that you have, every interaction that you have with people is really part of networking.
Thanks. That's great, Cynthia. See, Saskia, same question. What is networking and why is it important?
Yeah, since English is not my first language, I tend to look up words and definitions. And so I did that with networking as well. And one of the definitions that comes up is the action or process of interacting with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contacts. Another definition that immediately pops up when you look for networking is also the linking of computers to allow them to operate interactively. And while we are not computers, I still like that picture and analogy with computers, where you have a certain amount of knowledge and experiences in one person. And when you connect to that person, you get access to their experiences and their knowledge and can interact and exchange these experiences. So if we wouldn't network, if we weren't connected, we would be very limited in what we're able to learn, and everyone would have to reinvent the wheel from the scratch. So I think with this analogy to computer networks, it really brings to the surface what I enjoy so much, that I learn so much more, and I can also have other people participate in my knowledge. It's not only for me, and that makes my knowledge so much more important than if it was only for me. I can share it with others and maybe prevent someone from making a mistake that I made, or from taking so much longer to get to the same result. With a little help from someone else, you can be much faster in what you want to accomplish. It helps removing roadblocks, or it helps with maybe not getting the job, but getting an invite or getting a new perspective on things. So that's what I like so much about it.
Thank you. So now that we've talked about what it is, so how do you get started with networking? Amy?
Sure. I think to maybe echo some of what Cynthia was saying, I have the same first impression of networking of, oh, I don't want to like learn how to golf so that I can whatever, right? So, but remembering that it's, really like those connections and stuff. And, I think getting started with even your supervisor in your one-on-ones, telling that person that it's important to you to start to meet other people in the company and see what other groups do. And, are there ways that they can help you connect to people, or, give you opportunities in terms of being on projects or, other situations, trainings, anything that's going to get you to be able to interact with other people from other groups and teams is a great way to get started. And I think also, echoing some of what Saskia was saying too in her introduction of, it's not just work. So it doesn't have to be just people that you meet at work. It can be all sorts of other networks of people that you interact with where you find commonalities, and some of that will be related to work or hobbies or, other groups that you're a part of that give you just an opportunity to either round out some of the experiences that you've had, or find unexpected connections with people that then benefit you in your career as well. So, I think thinking more broadly than kind of what we first think of when we hear that word, and then also just letting people know that you're interested in some of those opportunities to meet other people and make those connections.
Definitely, thanks. And Saskia, I think you touched on it a little bit, but how about you? How do you propose getting started with networking?
Yeah, I like what you said, Amy, with thinking broader about networking, not limited to the professional side of it. I got lucky and was sent to conferences and so on. It's always important to research a little bit ahead of time who is coming. I'm really bad with names. So whenever there are events, I find name tags extremely helpful so that we can start with names. At conferences, you get the countries on the name tags as well. So you can start, oh, you're from there and there, and find out because I don't know, you've been there on vacation, and start a conversation with something that is where you don't have to appear brilliant or experienced. You're just curious and start a conversation and find these commonalities that create this first bond, an interest. You have a shared interest in something, and that gets you started. I really like that. Since I'm already a little older, we used to have these business cards that no one probably knows anymore. Everyone puts in a contact digitally. What I made a habit is I take notes on the flip side of a business card so that I remember these commonalities or what we talked about. And now with doing it digitally, I still use the notes section in my contacts, and I need these reminders. And when I have them, the picture of that person is more complete. Until you know them well, then you remember. But for the ones that are on the periphery of your network, that is really helpful in this to get you started, and then you can continue to reach out.
Great, thanks. How about Martina? How do you continue to network throughout your career? Now we'll talk about getting started. How do you keep it going?
So I guess I'm just going to kind of go off of what Saskia started saying earlier about common interests, right? When you start, it's hard for me to start networking. I'm really bad at small talk. Like I said, I make bad first impressions. What I've learned over the time, knowing that I need to build these connections and maintain them, is that I don't focus on it, networking, as yet another thing to do. It's not a separate item on the to-do list. I'm gonna have my 3 101s. I'm gonna check in with my boss. I'm gonna make sure this project is, and then 30 minutes for networking. Can I go reach out to somebody? During work, what I really like to focus on, which amounts to networking, is reaching out for help or helping other people. And then as you're trying to produce solutions or, get your work done. And there is this belief, especially when we come out of school, that like effort gets rewarded, that you figure it out all on your own. And somebody's going to notice that you spend, 8 hours in the middle of the night researching this problem, even though like you could have just asked somebody and it would have saved you most of the day, right? And that's kind of feeds into networking. Like unlearning the part that you think that your own achievements are going to get rewarded, but learning the part where asking for help and reaching out to people is a way to actually network and make these connections. And then how you maintain them it's important, at least from my perspective, is to not necessarily just always keep them at work, right? Me and Amy and me, have been working kind of on opposite sides of the same problem, right? I provide engineering solutions for a lot of the customer service work that her teams have to utilize. And the connection that we build starts with work, right? And then hopefully as we're starting to build our systems more and more, I'm hoping the connection goes beyond that and I feel comfortable enough to ask her for her phone number, and then I can send her cat memes or ask her if she, you know, likes the outdoors. And that's the bond that keeps you going and makes people remember you and have that friend that Saskia made back in Germany reach out to her. It's not necessarily that they work together, but that commonality that you work. Anybody that works with me is usually bombarded with some ridiculous memes because I like that deeper connection. I don't want it to be superficial. And I think that's what really maintains it through the day. And don't make it like as part of your job to do it. Make it fun. You're just reaching out, you're getting to know people, you're kind of expanding your perspectives and your horizons as well.
So cat memes.
Cat memes
Since you
is
brought
the
you
key
into,
to networking. Mic drop. We're done here.
what about you, Amy? How do you keep it going in your career?
Yeah, I think I am the type of person who tends to like to have probably fewer people in my like set of relationships and stuff rather than like hundreds of people. And so for me, it's important that I am willing to go beyond what I'm just comfortable with, right? And try new things and volunteer for new projects and kind of try to continue to expand that. And so, you know, and especially I've been at Myriad for a long time. And so it feels like some of the connections I have then tend to be ones that have lasted over many years. And so finding new connections has been a lot of fun as well. And so, you know, finding new opportunities, different groups of people to interact with. And I think especially as we are kind of in this virtual world, I think there's some downsides and some upsides, which I think we'll get to a little bit more as well. But one of the upsides has been just the variety of people I've been able to meet through different activities like this sort of, you know, panel. It would have been harder to do in person. And so being able to meet people this way and just, so I think, yeah, for myself, especially being willing to try new things, be parts of groups that I wouldn't normally have been part of, and be able to find then through that a number of new connections and people who were able to just really enjoy getting to know better as well.
Thanks, Amy. And Saskia, you might have kind of a unique take on this just with your geographical and time zone changes. How do you feel about this?
Well, at pre-recording, we joked a little bit about inviting our mothers to these talks and what they would have to say. What my mother would say about me is that I'm so inconsistent and I can't keep anything at a certain level. And it's true that I'm not very consistent in reaching out to certain people at a certain frequency all the time, because that would be a huge burden for me. It wouldn't be maintainable. I don't raise that expectation with anyone, but I'm always good for a surprise reach out. Germany is professionally from the platforms more on Xing than on LinkedIn, but it's the same thing. You get little reminders that pop up. Oh, this and this person posted something, or it's their birthday, or they got promoted. And I use these opportunities to really reach out and congratulate or update them on where I am. And since I continue to do it randomly, I don't even increase kind of the workload. It's not a burden for me because it's when it fits in, and I do it. And when it doesn't, I don't have to because I established a habit. But I did increase the frequency of going on these social platforms, on reaching out. The digital world makes it much easier to maintain relationships across continents and time zones. You can throw something out and you get a response maybe 2 or 3 days later, and you still share some of the life of the others through their posts. So for me, all this was an upside. In person, to Amy's point, I don't think that I would have been able to maintain some of these relationships if I would have moved to the States 50 years earlier, where phone calls would have cost a fortune, and you write letters that arrive 3 weeks later. So
I actually started
That's-
doing that over the last couple of years recently, writing letters to my family in Poland or friends in Canada. And I've really enjoyed the slowness of responses there. So I have several friends that like letters, like handwritten on paper with a stamp
Mhm.
carried by a mailman. And that's actually been kind of a nice throwback to the olden days.
I remember last
Totally
time
off topic, but
I don't remember the last time I read a letter that wasn't like a Christmas card. Okay, I think so. We had a question in the chat, but I think this next question we had set up kind of speaks to that. So Cynthia, it's for you. So where in networking does mentorship fall, and how can networking affect mentoring and vice versa?
Yeah, my favorite topic. Yeah, I mean, I think networking and mentorship is really hand in hand. It's really like, yeah, it's really hand in hand because the relationship with your mentor is obviously like one very rewarding experience that you can have through networking, but then obviously that connection that you have with your mentor then opens up, you know, their network to you. And so, yeah, I mean, I think those two are definitely hand in hand. I did see the question in the chat, which is, do you want me to answer that now, Clinton?
Yeah, sure. How do you find your mentors?
While I'm on the topic? I think probably like pretty early in my career, how I would find mentors was just like having a specific problem and then like seeking, like thinking like, do I know someone, or do I know someone who knows someone that could answer that question for me? And then just like asking for help. So like being like, I don't know what I want to major in. Like, can I get my career counselor to hook me up with some, you know, like professor, and then I could just like go to them and seek career advice with like a very specific question in mind. I think one really good piece of advice I got from one of my mentors like very early on is like just to like have a lot of people in your like in mind, like whenever you make a connection with someone, like kind of what Saskia was saying, like write a little bit down about them and write down like what you think that you could not leverage, but like what you would find that like what you would want to like have advice from them for. So like I have people in mind where I'm like talking about, you know, being female in engineering and like kind of talking through like really difficult social situations. I have like people that I go to like answer questions about that. I have people that I run full on just like, is this salary number correct? Like I think those are important people to like have within your network as well. Full on like technology mentors as well. Like I want to learn more about this technology. Like what do you recommend? What classes do you recommend I take? Like people like that, like in your pocket as well. And one thing I think that has really helped me in this is like not having to formally label them as your mentor. And I think that like takes off a lot of pressure from it. I know like in TV, they always say like, there's like a, will you be my mentor? And like you meet like daily and stuff. Like I've found that, you know, not having that label actually like takes a lot of pressure, and like people are very willing to help. And so I feel like that probably has been like the easiest like the easiest way for me to like get more people within my network to reach out to. And then the other thing I would say is like, if you don't know anyone, reaching out to people that you think to be like, do you know who could help me with this? And then setting up one-on, like I'm just better at one-on-one than I am in large groups of people, has like really, really helped me in the past.
It's really amazing, Cynthia, because I feel like we've had such an opposite view of mentorship where you got so early on like informed and taught to like reach out and find mentors and find these answers and like poll all these people to get the best answers, where I was always thinking like, no, I need to come up with all these answers by myself, right? It's all on me. I should know these things already. You know, if I ask somebody, they're gonna think I'm an idiot. And which is funny because I'm completely opposite now of that, right? I will go out and ask just because I'm too lazy to Google. Usually I just ask Clinton. That's his own fault, because Clinton and I started quite some time ago working together. He was my boss. How old is my son? 10 years ago. We actually had a relationship before that, work relationship before that. You know, and he kind of feels like he forced himself on me as a mentor, because I wasn't, not in a bad way, like not to paint Clinton in a bad light, but he, you know, because we were at a small startup, it was okay for me to ask. And, you know, he explained to me that I didn't have to know it. You know, he hired me from a position where I was using the software that they were producing to build it out. And then I had to build some demos for potential clients. And I've never done that. And I think he just kind of gently guided me through the fact that I wasn't actually expected to know all these things because it's a new company and it's okay. And I had no idea, right? And it was years of beating it into me that like, it's okay not to know. It's okay to ask questions. And it's really Clinton's mentorship and networking that has brought me out where I am comfortable like asking and admitting that I don't know things, that it's okay not to know things. And now I go out and preach to all my reports and anybody who listens that ask questions, reach out to people. It's better to get the answer faster. You don't get rewarded for your effort. You get rewarded for your results, right? So find the most efficient path forward and go through that. And I absolutely love putting Clinton on the spot anytime I talk.
Appreciate that.
So it's just funny. I was just like thinking back, like if I knew what Cynthia was told so early on, how many more connections I would have had built out, you know, that way. Anyways, it was a funny comparison, and you know, I really have Clint to thank for my ability to ask for help and admit that I can't do something in the first place.
Yeah, Martina, I come more from your side of things. Of I need to be perceived as competent to be successful, right? So asking questions makes you look stupid, and I wasn't good at that. What I underestimated is the eagerness of others to share their knowledge and to mentor and to let them, most people who are further along in their career like talking about it. That's why we're here. We like talking about the experiences. We would love to help others to get where we are faster, more efficient. So thanks for having us here.
Absolutely.
And don't be shy to ask. Everyone's eager to answer.
Yeah, I've found generally people are really willing to be helpful. And actually, so this kind of segued into the next question you answered part of was, what challenges did you find early in your career versus now around mentorship, around networking? And why don't we go to Martina on that one?
Well, the one challenge that I like is consistent through my career is that first impression. I'm better. Like I was terrible at first impressions, and Clinton can attest to that. And all my friends can pretty much attest.
Still hired you.
That goes back to my abilities and my talents, right? I prove myself over time, and these people will vouch for me. But my first impressions, and before we started recording, we were talking about Women Tech Council and this woman, Kristen, who runs it, that I've now met a couple of times, and I should have jumped on the opportunity and have conversations with her. But it's just awkward and I'm weird and I seem standoffish at first. I'm sure once we start working together, the relationship will flourish. But like that was my problem 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and it's the same thing that I'm still working on. So, and that's okay. And that's part of the growth, is that I learned that that's one of my problems and my issues, and how I can navigate and work around it. I usually now have an awkward interaction, and then I quickly look them up on LinkedIn and message them, and then I can be more in depth and not have superficial conversations or anything like that, which puts me more in my comfort zone, and then, you know, I can develop those relationships there. But, you know, ask like the issue of like just being open and forward, it is something that I've learned over time, to be able to network and find mentors.
How about you, Cynthia?
Yeah, so I think one challenge, this might be the same that I found early in my career versus now, is just like I've dealt with like a lot of imposter syndrome in my career. I think I still do now. And I get like very nervous about networking in large groups, but then like know that it's important to meet people as well. I guess like a funny anecdote here was in one of my first jobs, it was my first day, and the way that they seated me was in this like office with one other person, and I like didn't get to sit at the cubicles with the rest of the office. And so like for the first month, I didn't meet anybody within the company besides my cubicle mate. And so to this day, it's my greatest con. I pretended that I was like in love with fantasy football, like in love with football, and created a fantasy football league, even though I like know nothing about football. And I would like go home. My husband would watch Sports Center, and I would just like repeat the things that he said at the office the next day. And then like, I don't think they know to this day that that's what I did. But I think like one of the biggest challenges is like getting into social situations, like trying to get myself invited to social situations was like really, really difficult. I think today that's still true, but I've learned to not pretend to like things anymore because it's very stressful. And one thing I like started doing midway was like looking for small opportunities to collaborate with folks on small projects. And so that's true at work. Sometimes like we're dealing with a small project, but then there's like a small like, or a big project, and there's like a small spin-off project. Like that might be something as in like, you know, this dashboard looks crazy, like, can I help you fix it? Or something related to like just an annoyance that someone has had, like maybe like it's not related to anything that we're doing now, but can I build you a small solution? Or like, do we want to, you know, pick up on intern recruiting together, like as a way to kind of network with folks and like work with people on small projects that that like I just do much better in that like one-on-one situation. I also think that this is like really great because, you know, back in the day when I was doing this, it was with like other junior engineers and like other people that I was like working with. And then like now they're all like executives at other companies, and they have like a much better network than me. And so like being able to tap into those relationships now has been like really awesome. So I would continue doing that.
Thank you. How about Saskia? Do you have any thoughts on that, like early career versus now?
Yeah, I think I alluded to one of my early hurdles by saying that I didn't know how much people like to share. So early on, I got stuck in this reciprocity paradigm that if you have a relationship, you have to have something to give or invest first before you are able to take. And that truth got told by one of my bosses. He's like, we want to turn that around, take something and then pay forward. So you can, even in a new relationship, you can start taking something and learning or without having given, and then you give it somewhere else, and that person is now the taker. It's not a one-on-one in this network. If we think back to the analogy with computers, you can take something and you absolutely don't take it away from that hard drive, you can copy it over, right? It still remains there. You don't take anything away if you take advice or if you take time from that person. And then there's a time in life where you can pay forward and reinvest what you took. So that was early on. I was just thinking that people higher up in their careers aren't interested in me and I have nothing to contribute. But they were interested in developing me and investing in me. And now it's actually what I said with, I always feel bad when someone reaches out and I can't answer the question immediately and they have to wait and maybe feel that they're not important. That's what I currently struggle with a full calendar and back-to-back meetings. And I wish I could be faster when someone else reaches out with a ask and be a little more quickly to respond to requests. That's my current hurdle. People might give up on me and not reach out because, well, she won't answer.
I can jump in. There's a question from Riley there about Riley there about how do you overcome the challenge of asking questions if you don't have a Clinton? One, get a Clinton. This Clinton's mine. Get your own Clinton. No, you can have this Clinton. He's fantastic. But in a serious thought, like just piggybacking off what Saskia's saying. Saskia is a VP. She's extremely busy and she wants to answer people's questions and she wants to be there for you and help you. And how you overcome the challenge of asking people questions is there's two part of it. Two, know that most people really love talking about themselves and showing up and sharing their knowledge because it makes them look smart, right? And the second part is they don't think about you as much as you think they do, right? They don't think about you that you're stupid because you're asking questions or you're annoying because you're asking questions, because you're asking them the question and they get to answer it and talk about themselves, which is fantastic, why I'm here. And two, it's they have their own insecurities and their own problems. So like we always keep thinking that people have all these opinions of us and judge us and you know, look down upon us, but they all have the same problems we do. And that comes back to like things like imposter syndrome, right? You're not the only one and people don't give you as much of their thought as you think they do. And keeping that in mind, for me, makes it easier, right? They're going to forget that I asked the question 5 minutes later. They're going to feel good that they got to share their knowledge and show me that they know something as well, right? And that collaboration happens. And keeping that in mind, let me overcome asking questions. Because having Clinton was one thing, but I still have to go out there and had to learn to admit that I didn't know things, that I needed help. Or if that's too hard, you can spin it on an efficiency, on the efficiency angle, right? In your mind, you're not stupid, you don't know, you can find it out, but I'll get it quicker if I ask something. So it's not because I don't know, it's because I just need to get it faster and I'm going to deliver it faster and we're going to have a solution earlier on and we get more people to collaborate. So that's kind of like mental shenanigans that you can do to be able to reach out. And then, you know, I know the next question that's going to come up, which is the remote work networking and connecting, which is really.
I'm actually let Amy speak first.
Yeah. I'm just saying that right now it's just easier when you're asking the questions because you can just type a message, right? There's no face-to-face interaction, and you can just go ahead. And
that's actually something that I would add to what you just said, Martina. If you're in a meeting and you have a question because something is mentioned that you haven't heard before, Myriad loves acronyms and I forget half of them most of the time. And have someone you trust on a private chat and say, should I know that? Or is it okay to ask, and kind of align, and maybe this person already knows it, has heard it, or they absolutely encourage you and say, yes, of course, I need to know that too. And then you feel encouraged to ask and build the culture. by having a partner that you can chat with in the
With
background.
that, I've played this game as my confidence grew. Now I just ask something that I assume everybody knows. I just ask in the public channel, and 90% of the time, like there's immediately, I was like, oh yeah, I was wondering that too. Everybody, like, if you're confused, most likely everybody else has questions about that too. And it's like, it's really fun to like ask that question and then immediately see so many other people be like, oh, thank God you asked that question. Now I get the answer, and now I'll let you speak again.
So just a time check, Cece, are we like hard stop at the hour, or we got a few minutes?
Yeah, let's see if we can wrap up. We've got 6 minutes.
Well, so I did want to hit the how has networking changed in the virtual remote meetings, and we hadn't heard from Amy in a little while. So
Sure. Yeah, I think some of it's gotten easier and some of it's harder, right? So unfortunately, you don't get to stand in the hallway with somebody while you're waiting for the meeting room to open up, or walking back to the office with somebody else, or running into them in the break room or the elevator, this sort of thing, if you're 100% remote or even mostly remote. And it's super weird to just call somebody up and say, hey, how are you doing? And so it feels like it's so much more intentional, right? Of scheduling time with people and making sure that you've set aside time to connect with people. But on the other hand, there are opportunities that have come up through all of this that I think is something that we wouldn't have had previously. And so I think through Myriad, at least, there are a number of opportunities that have come up where we get together in a large group to learn something, whether it's Women's Leadership Council or through DEI or just other opportunities, and then get put into breakout rooms, and it's random. So then I get to meet people that I didn't know before. What do they do? And connect with them. And I've had a number of times where after that, then like we continue the chat in just a Teams chat of, it was great to meet you. I want to know more about this or that. And just an openness to that. And so, I think there are parts that are harder. I think there are pieces of it that have been easier in terms of just opening up new opportunities. And I think for myself, again, as I said before, just being really intentional about it. I can't let myself just pull up in my office and do my thing. I always have that little extra push that I need to make to step out and do something new, but I'm always so thankful afterwards that I have, and have really just appreciated the opportunities to connect with people in different ways too. So.
thanks.
There's another question in the chat that I find interesting. Clinton, when we have time, I would like to get back to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's how do you balance the mentor's guidance with your own decision making? Because I think that is a very, very important aspect where early in my career, I was thinking, even if an advice didn't feel right? Sometimes you have this gut feeling, someone's saying something and it's just not you. But I thought they have so much more experience than they know me better than I know myself, and try to follow the advice. I think when you take your time and think through what you heard and apply your filter and listen to yourself deep inside. And sometimes that is, for me, it was going on a bike ride and really trying to visualize, how does it feel for me when I follow this advice, and how does that match with my value system and with what I want to stand for and be seen as. And after a while, there would be a feeling bubbling up, and that would be my filter. You know it. Yourself, just trust yourself. That would be my advice with that question.
I was gonna just take a quick opposite spin on that, where sometimes the feelings that I have, so as acting as a mentor to some women at Myriad, and outside, we usually end up talking about parenting and work and leadership and how you navigate that. And I have to find myself to separate the gut feelings that I have about parenting, because I have some really weird and strong feelings about how I know I need to raise my children. But I've recently noticed that I am capable of stepping back and saying, like, this worked for me, but I'm not pushing it on anybody, right? Like, I can give more neutral advice of how it works for you without imposing my draconian hippie mother rules that I lived by, where, like, you know, only cloth diapers and all that nonsense.
Yeah,
Cynthia,
I was gonna say that,
That's
like,
good.
no, oh, sorry, no good
No,
mentor is gonna like tell you what to do. They're like, we're there to offer, or like people are there to offer like an additional perspective and like another way to think of something. And like maybe that's like one of the things I would say on like how to maintain a good mentor relationship, like through the years, is like after you solve your problem, like going back and like being like, this thing that you said really resonated, helped me with this situation. Like I constantly use that to like keep in touch with folks. And yeah, I agree with what everyone else said as well.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and wrap it up. I have thoroughly enjoyed this whole conversation, and I feel like we could continue on. There's a couple of really great comments in the chat. Thanks for posting those. Really appreciate you, Jess, and Riley, and I'm gonna say it wrong, Samandeep.
Sam.
Samandeep. Anyway, just great questions and great comments as we've gone through. Is there anything that you'd like to wrap up with, Clinton?
Just thanks for the opportunity to sit down. It's really nice getting to know you all a little better. Well, with the exception of Martina.
Yeah.
too much knowledge there. Just
Yeah, no, it's been really interesting to see the dynamic with you guys. Just such a great team, and I just can't thank you enough for taking time to kind of share career ups and downs in relation to networking. I feel like every time we have these conversations about mentoring and relationship building, we all walk away that much better as just individuals in our work and in our personal life. It's really encouraging. So yeah, and thank you again, Clinton, for moderating and asking the questions, and really appreciate you guys coming so prepared. So yeah, with that, let's go ahead and just wrap up.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for joining. And you guys take care and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Too.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.